There is new light shining on the Sistine Chapel this morning. New technology will help preserve Michelangelo's masterpiece. It includes thousands of LED lights surrounding those famous frescoes. Pizzy is in Rome with the massive renovations and the price tag. Everyone's obsessed with Michelangelo's genius. But what most people don't realize is that he was a man holding a dark secret. For 500 years, that secret was hidden in plain sight, painted over on the walls of the Systeine Chapel. Now, new discovery has uncovered it. Experts found a hidden text, a personal message from the master himself. And it's not just shocking, it's dangerous. This discovery doesn't just change art, history, it changes everything. The secret message reveals a truth Church tried to bury centuries ago, the anomaly in the fresco. For more than 500 years, millions of people have stood on the cold marble floor of the Systeine Chapel, heads tilted back, staring in breathless awe. They look up at the most famous ceiling in the world, a masterpiece that spans over 12,000 square feet. Then they turn their gaze to the massive wall behind the altar. The Last Judgment, a swirling, terrifying, and brilliant masterpiece of over 300 figures painted by the master himself, Michelangelo. It's a work of art that has been studied, debated, and admired for centuries. We thought we knew everything about it. We thought it had given up all of its secrets. Yeah, about that. We were wrong, dead wrong. Just a few months ago, a small specialized team of art restorers and scientists led by the fictional brilliant Dr. Eleanor Rossi was given permission to do what most people thought was finished back in the 1990s. Conduct a new high-tech analysis of the chapel. The last restoration was famous. It was a 20-year project that removed centuries of candle soot, grime, and clumsy repairs, revealing Michelangelo's original shocking and vibrant colors. It was like seeing the paintings for the first time. But this new project was different. So here's the deal. They weren't just cleaning. They were looking, using brand new non-invasive technology, including terahertz imaging and multispectral scanners. They were creating a millimeter by millimeter digital map of the entire chapel. What most people don't realize is that terahertz scanning is like a superpower. It allows scientists to see through layers of paint, plaster, and even thin stone without ever touching the surface. They were looking for structural damage, hidden cracks from centuries of vibration and pigment decay. They were, in short, giving the chapel its first ever digital X-ray. The discovery happened late on a Tuesday night. The chapel was silent, the air thick with the smell of old stone and wax. The only sound was the low electronic hum of the scanning equipment. Dr. Rossi and her team were scanning a section of the Last Judgment a few feet above the altar. This section is dark, mostly background, blue, an area of the sky that most tourists and even art historians tend to ignore. But here's the catch. The scanner started picking up anomalies, faint repeating patterns under the top layer of pigment. Dr. Rossi first thought it was just pentimenti, the Italian word for regrets. The old sketches or changes the artist made and painted over. But the patterns were too precise. They weren't the sweeping lines of a charcoal sketch. They were small, tight, and geometric. They were letters. The team, hearts pounding, repositioned the scanner and ran a high-resolution macro scan, and they couldn't believe their eyes. Scratched directly into the Antonico, the thin final layer of wet plaster right below the paint was text. Tiny, almost microscopic handwriting. The team was stunned. This was by all accounts impossible. You have to understand how fresco painting works. Artist applies a patch of wet plaster, called a giorata or a day's work, and they have only a few hours to paint on it before the plaster dries and chemically bonds with the pigment. This text wasn't painted on. It was scratched in like a secret note and then immediately painted over with the blue sky all before the plaster set. This wasn't an accident. It was a deliberate, planned, and incredibly risky act. The chemical analysis came back and the results were chilling. The pigment over the text was verifiably Michelangelo's, applied between 1536 and 1541. The text was under it. It was put there by Michelangelo just moments before he painted over it, hiding it from the Pope, from his assistants, and from the world. For 500 years, the artist had hidden a message, a secret diary, a confession written on the wall of the Pope's own private chapel. Within an hour, the project was halted. 2 members of the Swiss Guard in their full ceremonial uniforms arrived and stood at the chapel door. They were followed by a man in the crimson robes of a cardinal. The team's data was respectfully secured. They were sworn to secrecy, reminded of their oaths to the Holy See. But a discovery this big, this impossible, can't be contained. 1 member of the team, terrified but believing the world had a right to know, had already backed up the initial scans to a private server. Leaks started to trickle out, and what they say is baffling. The text isn't just notes. It's not a complaint or a grocery list. It's a long-coded message, a manifesto. And get this, experts who have seen the leaked scan say it reveals a side of Michelangelo so dark, so radical, and so heretical. It threatens to rewrite not just his story, but the entire story of the Renaissance. This discovery doesn't just add to history. It changes everything. But before we can even begin to understand what the text says, you have to understand the mind of the man who wrote it. He wasn't the divine saint the church made him out to be. He was a prisoner, the man behind the myth. Everyone's obsessed with Michelangelo. We see him as the ultimate Renaissance man, a divine genius touched by the hand of God. But that's a polished version of the story, a myth created centuries later. The reality is far more complicated and, frankly, far more interesting. What most people don't realize is that Michelangelo Buonarroti was a deeply troubled, angry, ambitious, and profoundly lonely man. And that's putting it lightly. First off, let's get one thing straight. He hated painting. He despised it. He considered himself a sculptor and only a sculptor. To him, sculpting was the divine art. You were a creator like God, liberating a figure from the marble prison. Painting, he said, was a lesser art, messy, illusion, and fit for women or less talented artists. So, when Pope Julius II basically forced him to paint the Sistine Chapel ceiling in 1508, Michelangelo was furious. He saw it as an insult and, even worse, a conspiracy. He believed his rivals, especially the architect Briante and the painter Raphael, had cooked up the idea to see him fail. He was a sculptor, not a painter. How could he possibly paint 12,000 square feet of ceiling? He didn't just accept the job. He fled Rome. He ran. The Pope, a warrior who was not used to being told no, had to send soldiers to find him and threaten him with excommunication or worse, to drag him back. He spent 4 brutal, agonizing years from 1508 to 1512 lying on his back on high, rickety scaffolding, paint dripping into his eyes, his back, and neck seizing up. He wrote a famous poem about the experience, complaining of his beard to heaven, his aching back, and his face a fine pavement of paint drips. This context is crucial. This wasn't a labor of love. It was a prison sentence. And this is the first time he's alone in the chapel formulating his secret rebellion. But here's the catch. He was also a staggering genius. He used this lesser art to hide secret messages, his first act of defiance. Art historians have known for years that the creation of Adam panel, where God gives life to Adam, is hiding something. The red cloak billowing around God and the angels forms a perfect anatomically correct outline of the human brain. Think about that. In the Pope's private chapel, Michelangelo painted God inside a human brain. He was making a statement. The divine spark isn't from a magical finger. It's the gift of intellect. It's reason. And that's not all. In the panel, separation of light and darkness, the very neck and throat of God, if you look at it just right, form a perfect hidden diagram of the human brain stem. This was not an accident. The crazy part is he was obsessed with human anatomy. This was an age when the church strictly controlled science. To learn how the body really worked, Michelangelo spent nights in the cold, damp cellar of a monastery with a candle, a knife, and a human body. He was secretly dissecting human remains. This was forbidden. It was gruesome, smelly, and dangerous work. But he did it to understand every muscle, every bone, every sinew. He believed the human body was the true vessel of the divine. His art wasn't just beautiful. It was scientifically accurate to a degree that was almost unheard of. Now fast forward 24 years. He's an old man in his 60s. He's moody, rich, famous, and even more terrible, frightening than before. He's summoned again, this time by Pope Clement III to paint the entire altar wall, the Last Judgment. If he felt like a prisoner the first time, this time he was bitter. He spent 5 more years on that wall from 1536 to 1541. This is when he hid the text. He was a man who felt misunderstood by his patrons, hounded by his family for money, and isolated by his own genius. He got into a fistfight with another artist that left his nose broken and flattened for life. He was not a happy man. And get this, he even painted his own self-portrait into the Last Judgment. It's one of the most famous wow factors in all of art. He painted his own face as the flayed, empty skin of Saint Bartholomew, who was martyred by being skinned alive. He is literally showing the world how he feels, skinned alive. A martyr to his art, forced into a job he despised by patrons he didn't respect. This is the man who hid a secret message, not a divine artist, but a bitter, brilliant prisoner. So, here's the deal. He was already hiding messages in plain sight, like the brain and his own face. The new discovery isn't a new behavior. It's the Rosetta Stone that explains why he did it. The hidden text found just weeks ago is his final unfiltered word. And it's even more explosive than anyone imagined. The text wasn't just complaints. It was a key. The shocking translation. When the news of the discovery leaked, the first question was, what does it say? But it's not that simple. Though, the text wasn't in plain Italian or even Latin. What, Doctor? Rossi's team had found was a complex and bizarre mix of languages, ciphers, and symbols. It was a code. Michelangelo, ever the brilliant and paranoid artist, had encrypted his final message. A small secret team, including philologists, language experts, cryptographers from the Italian government, and a few unofficial art historians, was assembled in a secure location in Rome. They were working from the leaked high-resolution digital scans. The text itself is tiny, spanning a dark, unassuming patch of blue sky in the Last Judgment. It covers an area of about 3 square feet, but it contains thousands of words, all of them scratched in with a tiny, sharp tool. The writing was a masterpiece of paranoia. It was a mix of 15th century Italian, scholarly Latin, and even some Greek and Hebrew, but the real key was the substitution cipher based on anatomical terms. For example, the letter A might be represented by the word quor, heart, and bipol. It was a code only he or someone else with his specific forbidden knowledge of human anatomy could have easily written or read. It took weeks of painstaking work cross-referencing the text with Michelangelo's known private letters and poems to establish a baseline for his handwriting and vocabulary. Finally, the team got a breakthrough, and the first translated sentences made their blood run cold. This isn't a diary, it's a manifesto, a declaration of his true beliefs. The crazy part is it starts by confirming all the old theories. The text explicitly states, I place the Creator within the seat of human reason, the brain, for the spark is not given, it is awakened. This is a bombshell. He's admitting the brain in the creation of Adam was intentional. He's saying that God is human intellect. This is a Gnostic idea, a belief that the church had labeled a terrible heresy and had spent centuries trying to stamp out. But it gets much, much darker. The text goes on to describe what he really learned during his secret dissections. He wasn't just studying muscles for art. He wrote that he was looking for the seat of the soul, and he had concluded it was not a spiritual gift from an outside god, but a property of the human body itself, an electrical fire born from geometry. He writes the heart is a pump. The lungs are a bellows. The soul is the fire that moves them, born of the same geometry that moves the stars. This is pure, unadulterated heresy. In the 1540s, saying this publicly would have gotten him arrested and interrogated by the Inquisition. A man named Giordano Bruno would be burned at the stake just a few decades later for saying similar things about the stars. Michelangelo was smarter. He hid his beliefs. And get this, the text is also a blistering personal attack on his patron, the Pope. He calls the papacy a den of gilded snakes and refers to the doctrine of the church as a fable told to frighten children. He writes that he is a prisoner of fools, and that the Last Judgment is his true judgment, not of humanity, but of the church itself. He was painting a monument to their ignorance. This explains so much. It explains his grumpy, difficult attitude. He wasn't just an artist. He was a secret scientist, a philosophical rebel forced to paint the propaganda of the very institution he believed was holding humanity back. But the wildest part is what comes next. The manifesto isn't just his beliefs. It's a map. The text refers to the chapel itself, They sit on lies. One line reads, "But under their feet is the key." This has ignited a firestorm of theories. Under whose feet? The Pope's, under the floor of the Systeine Chapel. And what key? Another passage is even more cryptic. "I have painted the true creation, the one they burned the books for." The texts from the fire are safe. What fire? What books? Theories are flying. Is he talking about the Library of Alexandria? Is he claiming to be part of a group that saved ancient heretical knowledge from the Dark Ages? So, here's the deal. The text proves that Michelangelo was a leading mind in a secret underground scientific revolution. He believed that art and science were the real paths to God and that the church was an obstacle. He hid this message in the one place no one would ever think to look or dare to destroy, the wall of the Pope's own chapel. But the manifesto wasn't the end. The final lines of the text pointed to something else, something bigger and more organized. He wasn't alone. The heresy on the wall. The first part of the hidden text was a scientific manifesto. The second part was a personal attack on the popes. But the final section, the part that has historians in the Vatican in a full-blown panic, is where it gets truly wild. The text proves Michelangelo wasn't acting alone. He was part of a secret society. He mentions a brotherhood of the chisel and the compass, a small secret group of artists, scientists, philosophers, and even disaffected priests who were dedicated to preserving ancient knowledge. This wasn't just a club. They believed the church had corrupted the true teachings of the past and had deliberately plunged Europe into a 1,000-year night to maintain power. The keepers had a plan. They would use the rebirth of art and science, what we call the Renaissance, to slowly and secretly reintroduce this forbidden knowledge to the world. And what was their method? They would embed it in plain sight. They would use their commissions from their wealthiest enemy, the church itself, as a hard drive for humanity. They would hide sacred geometry, anatomical secrets, and Gnostic philosophy in paintings, sculptures, and architecture. They were, in essence, building a library of secrets hidden in the most famous art in the world. The text hints at others. The old man from Vinci, he writes, saw it too, but he wrote backward in his books. I write on the wall. This is a clear reference to Leonardo da Vinci and his famous mirror writing. Were they part of the same group? What about Botticelli? What secrets are hidden in the Primavera? This is a massive claim. It suggests that the Renaissance wasn't just a happy accident. It was a plan, a coordinated effort by a secret group to reprogram society. Michelangelo, the group's most famous and hot-tempered member, was their secret weapon. He was embedding their codes into the most watched building in Christendom. The Systeine Chapel wasn't a work of faith. It was an act of intellectual rebellion. But here's the catch. If this is true, did the church know? Yeah, about that. The new text makes one of the chapel's oldest controversies make terrifying new sense. When Michelangelo finished the Last Judgment in 1541, it caused an immediate scandal. And it wasn't just because of the art style. It was the nudity. The painting was full of hundreds of nude figures. One of the Pope's most powerful officials, a man named Baggio da Chiesa, famously said it was a disgrace and more fit for a public bathhouse than the Pope's chapel. Michelangelo, in a classic move, got his revenge. He painted Sistine into the fresco as Minos, the judge of the underworld with donkey ears and a giant snake biting him in a well, a very sensitive place. When Cena complained to the Pope supposedly joked, "I have no jurisdiction in hell." It seems funny, but it wasn't. The fight over the nudity was deadly serious. After Michelangelo passed away in 1564, the church didn't wait. In 1565, the Pope ordered another artist, Daniele da Volterra, to go in and censor the masterpiece. Volterra was given the humiliating job of painting fig leaves and loincloths on dozens of Michelangelo's figures. He's known to history by the sad nickname Il Bragatone, or the breeches maker. What most people don't realize is that this was always seen as an act of prudishness, a simple case of modesty. But the new hidden text changes everything. A wild theory which the text seems to confirm is that the nudity wasn't just a philosophical statement. It was a code that the specific poses of the nudes, their gestures, and their positions relative to each other formed a massive, complex diagram. Some theories say it's an anatomical chart of the human nervous system. Others, even wilder, say it's a star map pointing to a specific location in the heavens. The church, according to this theory, wasn't offended by the nudity. They were afraid of the message. They couldn't decipher the code, but they knew it was there. So, here's the deal. The fig leaf cover-up wasn't just about modesty. It was the first layer of a conspiracy. The breeches maker wasn't just covering sensitive parts. He was breaking the code. By painting over key figures and altering their limbs, the church was deliberately scrambling the message. The new text proves it. Michelangelo knew this would happen. "The breeches men will come," he wrote. "They will cover the truth with a cloth. But they are fools. They look at the skin, but the secret is under it. They censored the nudes, but they missed the real message. They missed the text hidden just inches away under the blue paint. They missed the final ultimate secret, Michelangelo's final victory." The discovery of this hidden manifesto, this secret cipher, changes everything. It's not just a new detail. It fundamentally shifts our understanding of the man, his art, and the entire era he lived in. The shockwaves are just beginning, and what was a secret in the Vatican is now a global firestorm. The Rossi leak, as the press is calling it, has been verified. The leaked scans are real. The art world is in chaos. For 500 years, the world was obsessed with the idea of Michelangelo as the divine artist, a servant of the church. But the truth is so much more human and so much more dangerous. The text confirms he was a rebel, a secret scientist, and a man who felt so trapped by the system he served that he resorted to hiding his truth in a microscopic code. That flayed skin he painted himself as, it wasn't just a symbol of feeling overworked. It was a symbol of his intellectual skinning, of having his true beliefs peeled away, leaving only the safe art for the church to display. Right now, the Vatican is in crisis mode. Officially, they have made no comment. The Systeine Chapel is closed for urgent structural repairs indefinitely, but sources inside say there is a massive debate happening. Do they reveal the text and admit one of their greatest commissions was an act of heresy? Do they try to deny it even though the scientific proof is undeniable? Or do they try to spin it to claim Michelangelo was just conflicted? It's not that simple. Though, the academic world isn't waiting. Historians are now looking at all of his work with new eyes. What's hidden in the David? Is his anatomically perfect form hiding a map of sacred geometry in its proportions? What about the Pieta, his sculpture of Mary holding her son? Mary is famously depicted as a young teenager, far too young to be the mother of a 33-year-old man. The church called it a symbol of her purity, but what if it's not? The new text has given life to a wild theory that it was a message about cloning or alchemical preservation, secrets the keepers of the light had preserved. And what about the Brotherhood? This discovery has launched 1,000 new investigations. Who were they? Are their messages hidden in the works of Leonardo da Vinci or Raphael or Botticelli? Was the entire Renaissance a beautiful orchestrated conspiracy to free humanity from dogma? But the biggest, wildest theory of all comes from that one line in the text. Under their feet is the key. What most people don't realize is that the Systeine Chapel itself is a wow factor. Its dimensions, 134 feet long, 44 feet wide, are believed to be the exact dimensions of the Temple of Solomon as described in the Old Testament. This was not an accident. The chapel was built to be a perfect recreation of the most sacred site in ancient history. So, here's the deal. If the chapel is a box, what's in the box? Or, as Michelangelo wrote, what's under it? The new theory is that the Vatican is not just hiding the text. They are using it. The chapel is closed not for repairs, but for an excavation. They are looking for the key. Is it a hidden library? A vault? Is it possible that Michelangelo, who was also the chief architect of St. Peter's, discovered something under the Vatican? Something from ancient pre-Christian Rome and built this entire artistic puzzle to point to it. We're the ones 5 centuries later who are finally reading Michelangelo's true last words. He painted for the popes. But this message was for us. It was a time capsule, a final desperate plea from a genius to be understood, not as a saint, but as a man. A man who used his art as the ultimate weapon to hide the truth in plain sight. The thing is, the text is out. The secret is loose, and history as we know it is being rewritten right now. This discovery proves that history is never really settled. Do you think the Vatican is hiding a secret library under the chapel? Or was this just the angry diary of a rebellious artist? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe.